Okay, interesting, right? I was just waiting for when you are going to bring AI into the conversation, right? Because any conversation these days about data or analytics cannot be without AI, right? And it's okay, right? So see, everything that we spoke about up until now.
Welcome everyone to today's discussion of data and AI. Well, a lot of things have been changing over the past few years with e-commerce coming in, omnichannel engagement, the pandemic, the customer behaviors are changing, right? And today we are going to discuss what is the outlook for the next 2025 and the coming years with all the AI happening in retail, and how do we improve customer growth, the revenue, and profitability of retailers, right? I'm your host Miran, who is currently leading the charge for Southeast Asia at Loyalytics AI. We help retailers with data and AI solutions to help them grow profitably. And today, with me, I have guests Ahmar and Danny. Ahmar, who is a co-founder and CEO of Loyalytics AI, who again, globally helping retailers across multiple regions grow their customers, grow their businesses, through AI and data-driven solutions. And we have Danny, who is an industry veteran in this space with close to 40 years of experience across multiple retail segments in Indonesia as well as US, right? So welcome, Amar and Danny, to the podcast today.
Thank you, Miran.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So before we start, now a lot of things are going on around AI, right? People are talking about AI, what's happening there, data analytics. These are some of the buzzwords that are going around, right? So what do you think, data and AI in general, specifically if we talk about data, right? Because now retailers generate a lot of data when they're interacting with customers, when customers are shopping in their stores, right? So how does it start? How does the journey start from data to AI in the retail space?
Yep. Very valid question, Miran. See, when I look at it, data or the usage of data in retail particularly is nothing new, right?
Yeah.
We started Loyalytics about a decade back, right? Roughly about 2015. But we have been working with data of course it was not called AI back then, but data driven decision making was something that we were doing since I started my career, which was way back in 2005, right? And even, of course, I was not the first one to kind of be doing all that, right? I knew my seniors, I knew folks who were doing it even earlier than that, right? So there's nothing honestly new in leveraging or utilizing data to improve efficiencies in any business, be it retail or be it any other business. Particularly for retail, why it becomes very, very important is because as an industry, retail produces a lot of data, right? It is one of those data-rich industries where hundreds of thousands of shoppers are shopping across your stores daily on your e-commerce site. So there's a lot of data that gets generated, and retailers have been leveraging this data to improve their business outcomes, right? There's nothing new in that. However, of course, there are differences when you move from regions to regions, right? For example, in US, the entire industry around data and analytics and data science is very mature. They have been doing it for many, many years now, right? I can go all the way back to 1990s when Tesco in the UK, for example, started using data for their loyalty program, the club card, and that story is really a prime example of how data driven decision making can actually lead to better outcomes for retailers, right? And now if you see, right, across emerging markets like Southeast Asia, India, particularly Middle East, right, we are kind of in that zone where businesses and of course retailers are just starting up to understand the value of data and starting to view data as an asset, right, as a competitive advantage, and therefore there's a lot of buzz and there's a lot of activity, right, around it. But utilization of data in retail is not really a new phenomena. It has been happening, for a long time. Of course, different I would say retailers are at different stages of this journey, right? Evolution, as you I think asked me, the data to AI and all of that. And of course, depending on at what stage you are, companies will have to kind of do different set of activities to make sure that they are able to derive value from the data that they are generating. So I think that uh, would be a long-winded answer to what you asked me. But yeah, I hope
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Sure, and Danny would love to get your perspective as well. And since you have been in this space for close to 40 years, and you
Yeah.
started even before there was something called as data science or AI in the space, right? So how do you see it is transforming, and then how do you see the difference when you started out and right now?
Well, if you go back decades ago, before there was even computers in retail, basically, there was data, but the data was usually the salesperson on the floor. They had a book. In that book, they would record their customer's name, the phone number, and also what they bought and what their preferences are. So it was a very unscientific way. And when that salesperson left that store, they took that book with them.
Yeah.
After that, of course, then stores developed their own credit card, so they had credit card information, transactional information. But that was the extent of it. So it was a very shotgun approach to reaching out to customers versus a personalization. So in the last decade, especially, there's been a tremendous amount of discussion, of course, about data and how do you enhance the data, as you already mentioned. But in the last couple of years, I think retailers are finally taking note about the importance of the data. Not only how do they utilize it to personalize a customer, but also how do they continue to engage that customer and how do they monetize the data as well. But unfortunately, most retailers, they have all this data, but as I call, it's a file cabinet.
Yeah.
And trying to pull the data out is complex for them. Number two is, as we've discussed many times internally, they don't have the people that really can analyze the data. They spend a lot of money on the tech side. They develop all these systems, and we're going to discuss later about in-house versus other programs, third-party programs. But the data's there. They don't know what to do with it. They invest in the tech, but they don't invest in the people to market the data that they have. Again, a long answer, but again, you go back and look at the decades of how things have progressed. So you can imagine, as you mentioned, the next 20 to 25 years, you can only imagine even the next couple of years how this is going to continue to progress and move. But again, it takes people, and it takes intelligent people to understand this data.
Right. Absolutely, agreed. We all understand the importance of data, and slowly retailers are also realizing how data is important, right? And we see a very tremendous shift in how retailers are consuming data per se. Even retailers are getting conscious on how to collect data, right? So collection data is again a different story altogether, because now with all the privacy regulations in place, different governance guidelines and all of that, people are a bit hesitant to share their personal information, right? So how do you see this is changing, and what kind of strategy, for example, a retailer can apply to collect more customer data, ensuring that the privacy concerns are not the privacy concerns are not hampered for the customers? And how do you see this, what are the kind of strategies that the retailers can apply towards collecting more or enriching more customer information in their entire database?
Fair enough. Okay. So see, let's take it step by step, right? Is collecting more and more data important for retailers to be able to take better decisions? Of course, yes, right? So there's no two ways about it. They have to do that. If they are not collecting anything, they have to start somewhere. If they are collecting basic information like name, gender, age, they'll have to probably go, and collect some more information, right? So data is important. I think we have already discussed about it. Having said that, I think I would like to allude to your point around data privacy and security, right? and that is something that definitely cannot be taken lightly, and I'm sure Danny, here would agree with me, right? So it's also, I would say, the responsibility of the businesses, retailers, because we're talking about retail here, to make sure that they have the right systems and processes in place to be able to not just collect but manage and process this data, right? In a very, very secure way, right? Because if you don't have that, then you rather have that, systems in place first before you go about collecting all of this information that you want to collect, right? So data privacy and security, of course, is paramount, and we can't kind of bypass that. We can't jump that step. It's kind of very, very important, right? Now, I think you also asked about what are some strategies that retailers can employ to get more data and all that. See, here again, Miran, one thing that we'll have to think about is, and one thing that I think everybody should think about is, as consumers, right? And the beauty of retail is that it's a very, like, it's a business where everybody can kind of everybody can experience it, right? Because all of us also are in some ways customers or consumers for all the retail brands that are out there, right?
Yeah.
I might be having my own retail brand, but I'm also a consumer for some other retail brand, right? So I can
Absolutely.
completely put myself in the shoes of a customer and try and understand from their point of view that, okay, if tomorrow somebody comes to me and asks me that, okay, give me XYZ data points about yourself, why would I want to do that, right? And will I be a bit skeptical in doing that? Of course, yes, I would be, right? So it's important to kind of understand their point of view, and I think the core point here is, what value are you giving them back in return for everything that you're asking them, right? You're asking them, for example, their date of birth. I'll take a very simple
Yeah.
example, right? Most of these loyalty programs nowadays, right? If you enroll into a program, you ask them, okay, give us your age and your date of birth and all of that. So, okay, I give you my date of birth. What are you doing with that after that, right? Are you giving value? Are you giving me some additional discounts? Are you surprising me on my birthdays? There are, of course, retailers that do it, and there are many others who I know who don't do it, right? So as long as we as businesses can truly demonstrate the value that we are going to give customers back, in return for whatever data we are collecting from them, I think it will always be a mutual exchange, and we can get
Yeah.
to a pretty good state, right? But if the value is not defined properly, right? If it's only asking and not giving anything in return, I think that is where the problem is, right? The moment a customer feels that, okay, this brand knows me, and whatever they are asking me is only from the point of view of being able to serve me better in a secure way. Of course, security is paramount, so that
Yeah.
kind of has to be tick
Yes,
box.
absolutely.
That
Yeah.
box has to be ticked. But beyond that, as long as I know that, okay, there is value that I can get, I think I should be okay in sharing data with any
Yeah.
retailer if I know that I will be getting value out of it, right? So
Right.
that is how I see it. So if you're a business, you'll have to first go back and truly articulate that value that you're going to give back to your customers really well before you start asking them all sorts of data that you
Right.
want
Right.
to. That's how I look at it.
Absolutely. So, absolutely, very rightly said, security is a very paramount thing, and having the initial system set up, ensuring that your entire data infra, or per se your tech infra, is using some of the benchmarks out there, right, for from a perspective of security. But also, before Danny, you share your perspective, I also have a thought that recently we were talking to one of the retailer, and what we saw is that, let's say a retail group has multiple brands within it, right? And they do a lot of cross selling within those brands, right? And it often, let's say I go and buy something out in a Nike, and the same retailer has, let's say, Skechers, right? Now, how do you ensure that a customer who has shopped in Nike, and when some from the Skechers they sound out a communication, right? It does not hurt their privacy concerns, because often customer, it might come that I have shopped in, let's say, Skechers, how come they are reaching out to me about products about Nike or similar brands that are out there, right? So considering all of this, what do you think, what is your perspective around this?
Well, this is something I'm very passionate about. Obviously, security is extremely important for customers, but again, going back to what was said earlier, you give the customer a value,
Yeah.
and the customer will not have any issue with receiving messages, whatever that message is, whatever channel you decide to use. But also, the customer does not want to get bombarded every day with, and
Too many
there's a telco company, I will not mention the name, but
Yeah.
every day I get 3 or 4 text messages,
Yeah.
and it's just annoying. And I wish I could block it, but unfortunately
Yes.
I cannot. But also, the quality of that data, to me, is more important than the data itself.
Right.
And let me explain that.
Yeah.
Retailers stereotype people based on gender, based on age. What they don't do a good job of is transactional data.
Yeah.
So if a mother, let's say, is shopping in the department store and she's always buying kids' clothing but never buying ladies' or men's, because ladies still buy the majority of men's apparel, then that's where you have an opportunity to cross-sell.
Yeah.
But that's what most retailers don't look at. They look at it, the customer is a shopper
Yeah. Yeah.
in my store.
Yes.
So when, let's say that something for home store
Yeah.
is promoted, they'll send, again, the shotgun approach, they send it to all customers. You know, I always joke about this, don't send me anything about hair products.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I don't buy hair
Yeah,
products,
yeah.
et cetera. But send me something about my lifestyle. And there's enough data there, enough transactional data that tells a retailer what my lifestyle is, not my age. Because at my age, I could still be 30 years old as a lifestyle, or someone at 30 could be my age,
Yeah,
et cetera.
yeah.
So I think that transactional history is extremely important versus the data points that say I'm at X age or I'm X gender, I have X job, et cetera. So I think it goes back again transactional.
And you know, just to add on to what Danny said, very relevant, of course. And to your question, Miran, I mean, you got to be smart about it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, if you know, for example, if you are analyzing your transactional data and you know that this customer has already bought Skechers a week back, why would you send them a Nike whatever, you know, ad or communication again?
Yeah.
You if you're smart, you will never do that, right? But if you're not, if you're using a shotgun approach and you're just spraying, and you know, you're really not looking at the data but just sending a generic communication to everyone, of course it can happen, right? Which has happened with all of us, as Danny was saying. I can give you my personal example, right? My daughter was born 9 years back, and you know, at that point in time, of course, I bought you know, those baby strollers, right? And then for the next 3 or 4 years, I used to continuously get you know, messages for buying another baby stroller.
Yeah.
Now I have only one daughter. How many baby strollers do I need,
Of
right?
course.
And even if I want to change, I'm going to change it maybe once in 2 years or maybe once in a year, but I'm not going to change a baby stroller every 3 months. So what is the point of sending me these communications, right? But unfortunately, this was a retailer back home in India, which is, of course, without naming anyone, fairly big retailer, right? So see, the thing is, data is an asset, right? As we
Right,
I think said
right.
at the beginning, and you got to have systems and processes in place and people, as Danny said, who can make sense of this, right? And then you know, leverage it in
Yeah.
all your business operations, right? Not just marketing or CRM or, you know, customer engagement, everywhere. And you know, I'm sure we'll talk about it later as well. But yeah, I mean, you if you have the data, you also need to be smart to use that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, completely aligned. You know, on your thoughts. And when we're speaking about data, right? So let's say we get the data and everything right? So we have the systems and processes, security, people, and everything there, right? So the initial foundation for building that skyscraper is already there, right? Now, what's next, right? Because you have the data in place, you know what are the customer behavioral trends. What do you do next with the data? Because as you rightly said, Danny, you know, sending so many communications nowadays, who looks into mobile phones, inboxes and emails? You can find hundreds of promotions coming with different kinds of offers, right? So how do you make sure that your communication, your brand communication remains relevant in this chaotic, you know, environment? And what are the next steps, you know, once you have the data in place, what's the next steps that you should take? We would like to start with Danny, if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I think that's it's a complex question,
Yeah.
and it requires a complex process. Because again, you do need to, because you've got the data, you've got the customer transactional history, and I will keep repeating that.
Yeah.
But you have to understand what are the products associated with what they're buying now. As mentioned earlier, you bought a stroller, but how about the other baby products?
Yeah.
And I'll mention something in a seminar that we had recently. I believe you were there, Miran, that there was a retailer that said they sold golf clubs. And how do you keep communicating with that customer? Well, you don't keep communicating. You got golf clubs,
Correct.
but you got golf balls, you got footwear, you got all the accessories and so forth.
Yeah.
And that's the piece that's missing now with the retailers.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, the answer again is very complex. I don't think there's a set scientific way to do it. It depends on the type of retailer, of course. It also depends on the data that you do have that's collected. But again, if you just have that transactional, the really detailed transactional data, you can go in with the rifle approach
Yeah.
and get those customers. And then you also, after you determine are they responding to you, then you know that's, and you're going to get a low response rate. We understand that. But that's your loyal customer. It's going to be, there's a retailer here that's got a loyalty program. They now say it's approaching 80% of their sales is coming from loyalty. There's a department store here. They say 65% of the sales is coming from their loyalty program, but their sales continue to drop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what does that tell you? They're not communicating properly to those customers that's in the loyalty program, so they can keep building the transactional value, the basket size, and frequency of customer as well. So I think there's a lot of dynamics that goes into it you've got to look at. And again, in my opinion, and I've been involved in many loyalty programs from the past, it's failed. Some has been successful, of course.
Yeah.
But it's because of not having someone to really analyze that data that I'm talking about.
Right.
A long-winded answer, but I don't think there's a scientific way. Again, it goes back to the retailer.
Makes sense. And from Ahmar, since you have been working with retailers so far, with multiple retailers across multiple regions, right? And you often work not just provide tools or platforms in place, but also help in the strategic decision making, help in bringing in expertise, right? So from your experience, what do you see, what is working, right, for retailers? What do you think, do you have any examples that you can share with us, about retailers, how they have succeeded, with the next steps after having the data right in place?
I mean, multiple examples, Miran, right? As I said, data is an asset and has to be used across the business, right? So I'll give you a couple of examples, right? Let's talk about retail, right? We are talking about retail. Customer engagement, we have been talking about. To your earlier question, how do you cut the clutter and how do you make sure that your messaging is resonating with the customers? The one word answer to that is personalization, right? Easier said than done. As Danny said, it's complicated. It's not very easy. But you got to try to get as close to true personalization and segment of one, as we say, as much you got to try to do that as much as you can, right? So particularly if I give you examples of what has worked well, of course when you have customer data, you have some sort of a CDP platform in place. You have almost, if not a 360, but let's say 345, 350 degree view of the customer, because you will never be able to understand, of course, everything. But once you have all of that, you start using that in your engagement strategies, right? You do segments and you do micro segments and you look at cross sells, you look at brand loyalties, right? You look at all these things and then you tailor your messaging very, very specific to that segment of customers, and the smaller that segment can be, the better it is, right? And with the ultimate goal of kind of achieving that segment of one, right? So that's on the customer engagement side, right? You talk about assortment, for example. Now again, very important for retailers. Traditionally, when retailers talk about assortment, the customer view is missing, right? many retailers, big ones that we speak to, that we are working with currently across geographies, look at merchandising as a very product play. The customer view is really not considered when you're talking about merchandising decisions, be it assortment, pricing, promotions as well. And that is where there's a big scope, right? If you have all of that data, you've got to look at what, which of your assortments your best customers are kind of most interested in. Assortment rationalization is an important area, right? Because there is an inventory cost, and you can't really possibly keep, and I'm talking about physical retail, you can't possibly keep everything in on the shelves, right? How do you do that assortment rationalization, right? One simple way is to just cut the long tail.
Yeah.
Right, look at your sales and say, okay, all these items which are, say, less than 1% of my sales, I'm going to just remove them, right? But is that really the best way to do it? No, right? Because what might happen is, if you dig deeper into your data, you might find that your best customers occasionally are also buying that item. It might not be very contributing very heavily in your overall sales, but still very important for your VIP or your best customers. Now, what do? Right? You can't just remove it. And there are multiple, without getting into too much of details, there are multiple, I would say, methods available to be able to curate your assortment. There are something called as consumer decision trees, CDTs, right? Where you actually look at all the attributes of the product, and you look at customer buying behavior, and you say, okay, which attributes are important, right? Are my customers, when they look at an item, let's say a toothpaste, right? Are they more interested in the brand of the toothpaste? Are they more interested in the price of the toothpaste? Are they more interested in the size of the toothpaste? And depending on that, you curate your assortment accordingly, right? So if brand is the most important thing, then you got to make sure that you have a good spread of brands in your toothpaste section. You can't just have one brand there, right? Because if it's just one brand, you alienate many of your customers, right? If price is important, you got to make sure that you have different price ranges there, right? So again, point is, utilize that data across different functions of the business, right? Assortment, pricing, again, I can
Yeah.
go deeper into that. Even promotions, right? Very important. Retailers, promotions is their lifeblood, right?
Yeah.
There are hundreds of promotions happening every day, but how many of them are really data driven? Very few. And I'm talking about some of the biggest retailers, Miran, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, still do not have the visibility of which promotions are really making money for them, right? And the answer to, again, all of these is, first, being able to collect the right sort of data. Quality of data is very important. As Danny mentioned, is not just the quantity. I mean, I could have billions of rows of data, but if the data is garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
Again, long-winded answer to your question, but the thing is that the data and application of data and application of insights coming out of that data across different functions in retail, be it customer, merchandising, marketing, has definitely led to tangible benefits and impact for many of the retailers that either we work with, or we also know of retailers who are kind of leaders in this space and are doing well. Right? There is a reason why you would see one let's say hypermarket doing really well and the other one not doing really well, in spite of carrying almost the same sort of assortment. There has to be a reason. Why is Amazon so bloody good, right? There has to be a reason, and that reason, most often than not, is their ability to leverage data and generate insights, and then implement those insights, and then again, do a lot of experiments, measure, learn, and repeat this cycle.
Right, absolutely. And all of the things that you talked about, right? So ultimately, the goal is to reach, an optimal customer loyalty, or per se customer stickiness to that brand, right? So that they come, repeat purchases increase, they keep shopping with that particular brand, right? But now, with the advent of multiple platforms, multiple marketplaces coming out, there's a lot of competition, right, across brands. and we see that products are almost similar. Everyone tries to bring up a story of their brand, but ultimately there is also a play of pricing there, right? There's a lot of play on how do you reduce or increase the price or give optimal discounts there, right? So what do you think, how do they balance? Because once when you talk about reducing a price for a particular product, you are also talking about impacting the margin that you're getting out of it, or the sales that you're getting out of it, right?
Yeah.
So how do you create a balance between the two, the profitability as well as the pricing? And would love to start with Danny, since you have been working with
Yeah,
multiple
I've been
brands.
chomping to
Yeah.
that. Yes.
Yeah, please go
Because
ahead.
we've been talking a lot about the customer data and the customer personalization and so forth, but something that Mara brought up is extremely important for retailers to understand the assortments, what's moving, what's not moving, what actions do you need to take, what's the pricing strategy, et cetera. Most retailers, they'll run a 20% off promotion, 30% off, whatever it is, and their sales increase, let's say 10 or 15%, but they don't look at the margin.
Yeah.
What's the impact? Did that 10% increase cost you X, Y, Z in margin and so forth? And it's not just because they look at a total, and then they usually drill down, of course, but it's a very unscientific way of looking at it. It's again, I use the term a lot, antiquated, because they're using Excel spreadsheets and they just sort, et cetera. But they don't look at the impact that it has to their total margin. So at the end of the month, when the numbers come in, oh, my sales grew 10%, but my margin's a minus. Why? And that's the association that is lacking with analytics in retail. It's been going on for years and years and years.
Yeah.
It's still going on today.
Yep.
Now, with the analytics that are available, there's no reason why it should continue into the future, especially with price, the ability to look at pricing. How is that pricing moving your results, your sales? Or always 80% of your sales come from 20% of the items. It's always the 80-20 rule,
Yeah.
regardless, et cetera.
Yeah.
But the least selling items, what's the price that you need to move it and to clean up your inventory? Because aging inventory is a huge problem with retail, especially department store, versus supermarkets usually fairly okay.
Yeah.
But a department store, if a product's on the shelf for 6 months not moving, you got a problem. I always say if it's on the shelf for 6 weeks and it's not selling, you know what the trend is going to be.
Yeah.
But most retailers look at 12 to 18 months and they think it's okay. And that you can't do that anymore. You mentioned the competition. Competition is getting stiff, very stiff. And you look at the ones that are profitable, the ones that are successful. I hate to say this because I'm a department store guy, but it's not department stores. It's the specialty stores that can really manage their sale or their inventory, their assortment, their pricing strategy. They're very focused. And that's one of the differences between not looking at data and using the data, in my opinion. So.
Absolutely, Danny. Absolutely. So Miran, you also mentioned loyalty, I think, right?
Yeah.
See, loyalty, I read something, in fact, one of the retailers that we work with currently, their senior leadership, somebody in their senior leadership wrote something that I truly relate to. And he wrote something like that. Of course, I don't remember the exact thing, but he said loyalty can never be bought. It has to be earned, right? And I think it's very true.
Yeah.
So discounting and cutting off prices and giving discounts to customers is not a very long-term strategy to win customer loyalty, right? It never happens, right? All you're doing is you are probably devaluing your brand. And there are multiple examples of brands, where if the only strategy that they have is to lower the prices and sell, it never works, because beyond a point, that is what the customer then always expects, that I'm always going to get it at that price, right? So that becomes the actual price and there's no real value there. So if you really have to, so customer loyalty again is multifaceted, it's comprehensive, and you need to look at multiple things to be able to truly engage your customers, right? Data, of course, helps you a lot, right? But it's not just promotions and discounts that you can give and and then hope that your customers are going to become loyal, right? And similarly for the loyalty program as well, one thing that we see a lot is again, retailers start a loyalty program. It is an investment, and then they feel that magically everything is going to just fall in place, and they will start having loyal customers, and customers are going to come, and repeat rate is going to increase, and whatever, right? Sales is going to increase and all that. It hardly happens, right? There is a statistic that we quote very often, which is, I think, some study done by Capgemini a couple of years back that said 77% of the loyalty programs actually fail within the first 2 years. Why is that? Right? Because I think the focus is not really on delivering value to the customer. The focus is just on the mechanics of the program, giving away some points, and which are essentially discounts, and you can't do that, right? So retailers that we work with, for example, right, we make it very clear. We make it very clear that a loyalty program cannot just be a simple vanilla points based program, right? There has to be multiple other elements to it, and the focus always needs to be on the customer, and the focus always needs to be on what value am I really delivering to the customer. A few times, of course, it can be discounts, it can be competitive prices, but that cannot be the case always, right? So you got to also think about how can I kind of give them, depending on whatever. If you're a fashion retailer, as Danny said, right, how can I make sure that I'm following the latest trends? I'm kind of coming up with designs that truly resonate with the kind of target group or target audience that I have. For a grocery retailer, again, it's important to make sure that the overall experience, right, of shopping is very important, especially with the advent of all of these quick commerce and online stores. And already there is a lot of pressure that you see on physical hypermarket retailers, because face facts, right? I mean, grocery shopping is not a very enjoyable experience, right? And when you have the Astros of the world, for example, here in Jakarta, and let's say multiple other e-commerce and quick commerce solution, who would want to go and buy a banana when you can just order it online?
Yeah.
Right? So there are multiple things, right? It is not just one, and it needs to be looked at comprehensively. And as I always say, data will help you in this process, but of course, data alone itself will not answer everything, right? So
Right.
But yes, I think the focus has to be on delivering true value, and not just focusing on one part of it, which most likely is discounts and all that.
Yeah.
And the insight, I think the insights in that data is so important too, because just because the customer may be the most frequent customer or the biggest spender doesn't make them the most profitable. Especially here in Indonesia, you have to be cautious of the traders, because they're what we call bottom feeders.
Yeah.
When the discounts are 80%, 90%, whatever, they'll come in and wipe out an assortment. So they're the most frequent shopper. They're the highest spender, but they're not profitable. So those are the customers you don't want to really communicate to, unless you've got a severe problem with inventory, and you need to have a different relationship with that group. So I think the insights are very important. Don't just look at the top and say that, oh, this is my best customer, et cetera, et cetera. You really have to drill down in KYC,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely agreed. And when you said about loyalty, and you also mentioned about optimizing pricing strategies and different other things, right? And some time back we were also discussing about customer engagement per se. How do you have those right communication in place, right at the right point in time, right? With all of this going on, of course, at the end of the day, you are trying to impact the sales, you are trying to impact your profitability, right? But people, and when at least when I talk to retailers, they expect certain impact in a way, right? But measuring those impacts are still kind of hazy for them. They don't clearly understand how to measure the impact of those, all the different things that they're doing. So what do you think can be some of the indicators, or what do you see as some of the indicators in the retail space, all the things that they're doing towards data, customer engagement, loyalty, what are some of the indicators that they should look at in order to understand whether the strategies that they are applying is even working out or not?
So, see, a measurement strategy, a good, comprehensive, robust measurement strategy is a must. Okay, so you'll have to begin with the end in mind, right? So you got to be very, very clear that okay, if I'm doing certain activities, what is it that I'm really wanting to move the needle on, right? So let's take the case of customer, right? You're doing certain campaigns. You're sending some offers or communications to certain segment of customers. I'm hoping you're not bombarding, right? You're being
Yeah.
data driven. But even when you're doing all of that, what is it that you really want to happen, right? Do you want to, are these your as Danny said, are these maybe your good customers in terms of sales, but profitability not very good? So are you trying to push them maybe your own brand so that overall profitability of that segment increases? So is this more of a cross sell campaign? And if that is the case, then your measurement has to be that okay, what is the penetration of, let's say, my own brands in the basket for these customers, right? Or is it that okay, these are again my frequent customers, but their ATV is not very high, they come often but they shop for um, you know um, low amounts, so I want to increase their ATV, right? I want to increase their basket size. And therefore I'm doing this. But in that case, the KPI that you measure is ATV then, right?
Yeah.
So basically what I'm trying to say is that you have to have those KPIs very well defined for everything that you're doing, right? um, um, on 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 each of the areas in retail. So for customers, again, at the end of the day, I think the beauty about retail is that I feel it's a fairly simple
Yeah.
business, as to say. I mean, of course, it's complicated on the operation side, no doubt, but I'm saying from a measurement perspective, on the customer side, there are only a handful of metrics that you can truly look at, right? What is your ATV? What is your basket size? What's your overall customer lifetime value? What is your repeat rate? And then you got to be sure that whatever I'm doing, how is it impacting? Those metrics, those KPIs, and then you do a pre and post and check whether you see a significant needle movement in any of those KPIs. I'll give you another example, right? On the customer side, this is still easy. Easy in the sense it's far more quicker, because you do a campaign and then you have a test and control and you are able to kind of figure out, right, the impact. Where things get a little bit complicated is on the merchandising side, right? Because those things take time to happen. So to give you an example, we recently worked with one of our clients, right, around assortment rationalization. So we help them in terms of curating their assortment, making sure that the GP for a category, we picked up a particular category, and the idea was that okay, we want to improve the GP for that category, right? So of course, without getting into too much details of what we did there, but that takes some time, right? Because whatever the recommendations we had, it had to be implemented in the store. The results would take a lot more time, so we had to wait for 2 months to be able to finally conclusively say that okay, because we changed the assortment for this category across all our stores or across selected pilot stores, we were able to see an uptick in GP for the category, right, without losing too much of sales. We were, or without losing any of the sales, we were actually able to improve the GP there, right? So again, the idea is some of it is quicker, some of it might take some more time, but as long as you are very clear of what is the KPI that I'm trying to move the needle on, I think you should be good. And there is nothing in retail particularly which is not measurable, both in physical as well as on the e-commerce side. It's fairly simple, right? Everything, whatever you do is fairly measurable and can be done very quickly. But on the physical store side as well, right? So as long as you have a good measurement strategy, you should be good. You should be good.
Yeah, and Danny, since you have been part of multiple departmental stores, right? You would also have some experience in tracking some of these KPIs or indicators in place, right? And again, when I talk to retailers, people often expect the results to be immediate, right? Because certain strategies do take time, as you were telling, right? You are expecting the results in 2 months, it might come in 4 months, right? So what is that ideal time length for any measurement that you're doing, or what from your experience, right? What are some of the indicators that you used to look to, and what difference do you see there?
Well, most people don't like my answer on this because they expect an immediate
Yeah.
1 or 2 months. No, it takes at least 12 months. And even with a new employee, I always tell them you've got 18 months because with any kind of program that we launch, it takes us 1 year to really anniversary events, activities, promotions, especially here in Indonesia where we have so many holidays, the impact on the holidays. To get people up to speed takes about 6 months on understanding the program, to get buy-in from management. And the biggest obstacle that I always find anything about data is the people don't believe the data. They say, yeah, but, et cetera. So it takes an ambassador, I'll call it an ambassador for data in a store or whatever it is, but it's got to start at the top also. The CEO has to really buy into this. The CEO, the chief merchant, et cetera, has got to buy into it. And any obstacles that come up, they've got to be the ambassador for it. They've got to understand it. So to give you a short answer, that's the biggest obstacle. The KPIs are simple for me. It's not just about driving sales. It's also about driving the GP, as Ahmar mentioned earlier, because anybody can drive sales. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to do that. 50% off, 75% off, I can drive sales, but can I make money?
Yeah.
And that's the key thing at the end of the
I
day.
think that is something that people should focus on.
Right, and that's all the shareholders care about anyway.
true.
Are you making money for me, et cetera?
Yeah.
Not necessarily about top line sales, but yet top line sales can cure a lot of problems on the bottom. But again, it's going to take 12 months. You'll start seeing results along the way, but to receive the full benefits, it's going to take you around 12 to 18 months because you really have to cycle through the promotional cycle. Also, when we're talking about the assortment, it takes 12 months to cycle through the assortment.
Yep.
Unless you get crazy and say, okay, I'm going to clean everything out at 50% off, 75% off. And then the next thing you're doing is going to the bankruptcy court and say, I have no money.
Yeah.
So it takes a while. But unfortunately, retailers don't have a lot of patience when it comes to something like this, but they have a lot of patience when they try to turn their business around.
Yeah.
So our job obviously is to educate them on what the possibilities are that's reasonable. Don't offer the moon when we know it's not going to happen.
Absolutely.
So it's better to what was the old saying, under promise and over deliver.
Yeah.
Than is, but again, it's going back to get that ambassador that's really pushing and driving, that can explain it in the company and not just something that's been forced by the top down. You've got to get somebody on the mid layer. And I think that's what's so important about the clients we're working with now in Indonesia. We've got that buy-in from all levels at this point. So I expect to see the results to start coming through fairly quickly. But again, it's going to take 1 year.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And just to add on to what Danny said, I think it's important for us like as let's say service providers or vendors, data experts, so as to say, right, to be able to articulate the ROI really well, right? Because when you're going and talking to the CEO and you are giving them this elaborate plan around you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this and all of that, and here is the investment and this is the money that you need to spend, anybody would then ask, okay, this is all fine, when will I see the return, right? Or what kind of return can I see? So it's very important to articulate that really well, right? And as long as they kind of can understand the value that they will get out of the entire initiative, no matter what the timelines are, I think more often than not, you should be in good stead. What I feel at times happens is that the articulation of that ROI is not very clear, right? And that is where sales deals kind of drop off or do not happen. So I think it's important to be very clear about the ROI.
Yeah. Absolutely. Very valid points. So, and when we talk about, since we are also talking about the time and the impact, how much time it should, and since you also mentioned that it typically takes at least a year or so to see the tangible impact across your business, to see a good return on the investment that you did probably a year back, right? Now, AI is there, right? We are talking about AI, a lot of buzzwords, and people often think AI as a magic wand, which is probably going to be true in the next few years or so. But right now, it's a transition phase, right, where you see that the usual technology is kind of transitioning into a AI based solution and platforms. A lot of the people are investing on AI, right? And it's often the question, right, what AI can deliver, right? And specifically if we talk about retail, what does it look like? Because retail is huge, right? There are a lot of things you can do with AI nowadays. You go to ChatGPT, you just type a question, you get answers, right? But there is more to this, right? A lot of places there'll be going to be impact from the AI front, right? So where do you see the retail landscape going towards AI, and what do you think should be the outlook for the retailers going forward?
Okay, interesting, right? I was just waiting for when you are going to bring AI into the conversation, right? Because any conversation these days about data or analytics cannot be without AI, right? And it's okay, right? So see, everything that we spoke about up until now, Miran, in terms of different solutions, different areas, AI can of course help in all of those areas, right? AI can do all of those things faster, and AI, of course, with AI, companies would be able to do it faster, and companies would be able to do it better also in many cases, right? So that's a fact, right? So what it does, it of course, your time to value significantly reduces, right? To what it is, for example, right now, right? So that is one. Second, what are some of the immediate areas that I see, where retailers can actually experiment with AI? See, we'll have to understand a couple of things. First, as with everything else, the foundation of AI is good data, right? So that is also something that I see a lot, happening, where there's a lot of expectations and people really want to do AI and whatnot, but the data ecosystem is a mess, at their end. So I think the first thing that they need to really figure out is, okay, am I AI ready itself, right? Do I have the right data? Is my data quality okay, right? Do I have the right platforms, the cloud platforms available for me to be able to experiment with some of these AI use cases, right? So that is one. Let us assume you have all of that. A couple of quick, I would say, use cases could be around customer service, right? And these are also some use cases that have already been implemented and been successful, right? So I'll give you an example. There's I think, Swedish company it's a fintech company called Klarna, which now kind of, so their entire customer service team, which was earlier about 70-80 people, is now being done through AI agents. So that entire team is now gone, and they have been able to kind of do all of that work using AI, right? So that is let's say, an immediate kind of, impact there, in terms of being able to do all of those things, right? And there are of course cost benefits to it. So customer service is definitely an area where I see a lot of these AI applications come up, and is an area where retailers can experiment. Again, they'll have to be careful about it, because it is also a very sensitive area, right? You really don't want your, let's say, AI bot kind of, having improper discussion with, or a conversation with a customer. You got to be very careful about cultural nuances, right? What is okay in, let's say, India or Middle East is not okay here in Indonesia. So you got to kind of take care of all those hygiene factors. But I think once you have done that, customer service is definitely an area which I see has a lot of potential for impact, as far as AI is concerned, for retailers, right? The other area is also around, being able to get insights a lot faster by the, let's say, senior executives than what is the case now, right? So we build a lot of dashboards and, these reports, right? But one of the challenges with that is, or the pet peeve that we hear very often is, okay, there's a lot of good data, there are a lot of insights, but it's just too much, right? And I really don't have the time to go through so many reports and so many dashboards, and then, can I ask a question, right? Because everybody is now kind of really familiar with ChatGPT sort of an interface, right, where you ask a question and it gives you whatever answer you hopefully are hoping to get, right? So those are other sort of applications where you put an LLM on top of your core company data, and you're able to kind of get whatever insights you want to get fairly quickly, right? So think of a scenario where, say for example, a CEO needs a few numbers, and in a typical scenario they'll go to their IT team or analytics team, and then a data analyst would work on that request, would kind of come back to them. Even howsoever fast as it is, it might still take a few days, right, before the CEO gets the answer, right, to a point now where you can practically just go and ask your AI chatbot or AI agent, and you get the answer there then and there, right? So that's another thing I think which could be very, very useful, and we are actually experimenting with AI agents which can do that. We've recently, in fact, beta released one such AI application, which we feel is going to be really helpful. But yeah, I think customer service, being able to get to data insights a lot faster, quicker, are some of the very quick AI use cases in retail. And of course, as I said again, see, everything that we talked about can actually be done a lot faster and better using AI.
Yeah, and Danny, and Amber gave a point from a tech perspective, because being a tech co-founder and working in a data and AI company, right? Which makes a lot of sense, right? But since you have been working with businesses and you have seen the entire transition from internet to mobile age, and then e-commerce, and now AI, right? So what do you think where this is going?
Well, again, I'll take you back to years ago when you had the dot matrix reports that were like this tall.
Yeah.
And you would sit there at night or the weekends and go through the report to dig out information. And, after a couple of hours, you get bored, basically, and you only cover the top part. And then you have to handwrite notes and send it to people, et cetera, et cetera. Where now, everything can be instant almost. You put that you've got that information. You can summarize the report, my best-selling items, my most profitable items, my best customers, what's my inventory level, what's my percent of ownership per item, et cetera, can be done in minutes versus before was days. So those insights that Ahmar mentioned earlier are extremely important for a merchant or a retailer to understand, to be able to make decisions faster. And everything that about retail is fast. It's got to be fast. You can't be looking at reports that are 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old, and make decisions because it's already out of date.
Okay.
But with AI, and I think AI is also extremely misunderstood by retailers. I don't think they know what to do with it. They know it's there, but they don't know what to do with it. And this is not a slam to any retailer, but it's obvious. So I think there's a big opportunity for educational training on what AI can do for them, and going back to the KPIs, going back to what was discussed earlier by Ahmar about basically educating these retailers on what it can do for them with the insights. So I think that's very important that they understand that where you're going through all these reports, and they still do it manually. I mean, I always say the best analytic tool that any retailer uses is Excel.
Yeah.
That's what they use,
yeah.
right? And
People
we know
are used to it.
Yeah, and it's also a stubbornness that I have a comfort level I don't want to change.
Yeah.
And we see what happens when they don't want to change. We can look at the department stores, and that's a perfect example. And again, I'm a department store guy, but it's a fact. They refuse to change, and we see where they are. So I think everything is insights, but insights are not important until you do something with it. What do you do with those insights? And are you smart enough to know what the insights are telling you to make those decisions that'll improve your business? And you've got to take down the shield. And I say it's a shield, meaning the obstacles in front of you that says, I've always done it this way. No, you can't do that.
Yeah.
It's a new day.
Yeah.
And I know one of the things we're going to discuss, I'm going to go ahead and bring it up, sorry,
Yeah.
but about do you build it in-house, like the loyalty program and so
Yeah.
forth? Do you build your intelligence, your data intelligence in-house? or do you go to a party that's already experienced in it? And I know we're going to discuss that later, but I just want to bring that out because that's an important piece, I think, that retailers need to understand.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Agreed. So when we are discussing about AI and everything, and recently from my recent discussions with again a specific retailer, I went to the discussion and it was like their expectation is I need a AI platform which can do magic, right? I just just configure it and it starts communicating with my customers, getting engagement done and all of that, right? So where do you see, is that the future going forward, where everything gets automated, wherein you don't need to have a CRM team, you don't need to have a marketing team to do all of the different things that you are doing, or is it a mix of both? Where do you see this going?
Yeah, I think you still have to have eyeballs
Yeah.
to look at the data. You've got to have marketing people that can organize and communicate what those marketing plans are, et cetera. It takes a blend, but it doesn't take as many as you've had in the past.
True. Yeah.
So because you can make those decisions faster, et cetera. So what is important is having those data analytic people that can really understand what it's saying. Marketing, and I wrote an article about this about 6 or 8 months ago about the change in the CMO level or responsibility of the chief marketing people, because where it was a few years ago is very different today. And it's not just about social media. It's about what's the data telling you from the social media, the engagement level, and so forth. And that's what's lacking also. When we look at, we're talking about omnichannel in total, it's not just the physical store, it's not just e-commerce, it's also social media as well. Yeah. So how do you engage those customers, and what are those customers telling you through your social media as well? So I think it takes the proper team, and I say eyeballs looking at the data, that has the ability to understand what it's telling you to create those marketing campaigns.
Yeah, would love to hear your thoughts as well here.
Yeah.
Ahmar.
So agree with what Danny said, that I think we use this term a lot called human in the loop, right? When you talk about AI these days, right, we say human in the loop. I think that's going to be there, I feel. Having said that, honestly speaking, we are living in such crazy times, crazy in a good way maybe, as far as tech is concerned, that predicting anything 3, 4, 5 years down the line is a risky job, because honestly we really don't know what's going to hit us, right? But still, since we have to do, we do. I still feel the next 2 or 3 years at least, we do need eyeballs to make sure that whatever the AI system is kind of recommending or generating is something that makes sense for us, for our customers, right? Especially in customer facing applications, for sure. But I want to come back to your thing around customers expecting magic to happen, and I think their expectation is valid, right? And I think it is as close to magic as it possibly can be in many areas, right? And are we expecting a time very soon where actually you do not need a very big CRM team, and you do not need a lot of other systems and all of that? Maybe yes, right? Because intelligent AI autonomous agents would possibly be able to do a lot of what the teams are doing right now. Humans in the loop, again, as I said, would be there. But as Danny also mentioned, possibly if you were having, let's say, a 10-member CRM team, you might possibly not need all 10 of those people. You might just need maybe 5 of them, and then together, a combination of AI and humans would be able to do a fantastic job. So the magic that they are expecting, I think it's a valid expectation. And I think the important thing is, Miran, that again, as service providers, as data experts, AI experts, the responsibility is now on us to make sure that we make that magic happen for our clients, for our customers, for the retailers that we are working with, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they are expecting that, and I think we'll have to make that happen. And I'm very confident that, it will happen, right? It is just a matter of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Agree.
And then since you mentioned that the CRM team size or the teams typically working on this, different engagement strategies, everything will reduce over the time, right? So what do you see? What are the kind of skills sets or the kind of skills that people should develop, right, to stay relevant, right? Because if a AI system is coming in place and if it's replacing you, then what's your future?
Yeah, honestly, it's a very good question. Very, how do I say, thought-provoking question, right? I joke around with my wife saying that, okay, do we really need to send our daughter to school now? The kind of skills that they are teaching, subjects and all of that, are they really going to be relevant 10 years down the line? Or, do people need to learn new things? Again, short answer is nobody really knows, honestly, right? Difficult to predict. But the way that things are moving, surely the skills are not the same. The skills needed to succeed, let's say in 2030 maybe, or even 2035, are not the same that were needed to succeed in 2015. That is for sure, right? Even if you look, Miran, I mean, even if you look at the last 20 years, right? So many things have changed, right? And especially if you look at the last 5 years, right? The advent of ChatGPT, right, has changed many things. And the advancements in AI and the research and everything is happening at a breakneck speed. So definitely people will have to change their skill sets, right? I think what is more important fundamentally will be core human, so the distinction between machines and humans, right? So if it's intelligence, of course, machines are possibly can be far more intelligent, right? Because
Yeah.
they have that much more, let's say,
Computing
computing
power.
resources,
Yeah.
power, and everything, right? They don't need rest and all of those things, right? They are, but then, humans also, of course, have the power of emotions, right? And that is something that's, again, it's very, very difficult to kind of get into an AI, right? So I think the skills that would be needed to just answer what you asked me, at least what I feel are core human skills, right? Empathy, your EQ, right? Ability to have a delicate, difficult, sensitive discussion with somebody else, right? These are areas that are going to be very important, right? You have to be smart enough to be able to work with a machine, right? A lot of those uh, technical things, so called, possibly could be done by the machine, but you still got to tell the machine what to do, right? And you still got to plan things and all of that, right? So I think those core human skills are going to become more important rather than your, what is being taught in schools mostly. Unfortunately, I would say these days, right?
Yeah.
So I think people will have to keep that in mind. There's a very good book called The Skill Code. I'm forgetting the author's name, but that talks about, right, what are the skills that are really needed to succeed in this AI world. So I would recommend that. It's a good one, but yeah, it is one of those things
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
really don't know. How will it pan out?
Yeah, future is uncertain with
Yeah.
specifically AI and everything coming up. So Danny, would love to hear your thoughts as well on this. What do you think?
Well, again, I'll go back to a few years ago when what you needed in school was a 12th grade education, and that was it. You had skills that was more labor intensive and so forth before computers. And then you see the changes started to take place. Then you needed a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, masters, et cetera. But you look at all the skilled workers that's lost their jobs because they've been replaced by robots. And they don't know anything else because they were not educated to learn. But in my opinion, there's no excuse not to know, not to learn on your own. You can find out whatever you want today on the internet. You can go to YouTube and learn how to build a car, basically. So it's up to you to continue your education. Just because you don't have a certain skill set does not mean that someone needs to come and train you when you can train yourself, basically. But I think in the next few years, you're going to see this continue to be a more dramatic of a change, moving more and more into AI, more and more into technology and so forth. And the skill set's not there. They're not training it in the schools today. They're in the universities, it's not being trained. So there's a big gap. And we know here in Indonesia, that's the biggest challenge I've had, is trying to find the skill set that understands the technology. And I'm going to say technology because it's not just AI, even basic Excel. Trying to get people to really understand that. They don't understand it. They teach them a lot of marketing skills, but it's marketing related to social media, but it's not how to analyze it and how to use the AI for the future and so forth. So I think regardless of how fast it moves, I think we've got a challenge with the labor force.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there is this thing that I see very often, right? And I completely believe in that, which is AI is not necessarily going to replace humans, but humans who use AI are going to replace humans who don't. So alluding to Danny's point, there is no excuse that you have right now to not learn the new ways of working, right?
Yeah.
Why would you want to kind of do it from scratch when you already have systems in place that can give you a very good start, right? Why would you not use a chat GPT? Why would you not use a Claude if you are a developer? Why would you not use a Cursor or a V0 to be able to build your applications, right? When you get the entire boilerplate code there, then and there, right? So I'm saying that if you do not adopt to the new world, you will of course become extinct, which is I would say similar to any other technology that kind of happened in the past, right? Internet came and digital came and social media came and all of that, and people who did not learn eventually faded out, and similar will be the case in this age as well. So you got to of course be smart, you got to embrace all the super applications that are there right now, and you got to be more efficient. You got to have that mindset that, okay, how can I be more efficient in whatever I am doing, right? How can I do it better? How can I do it faster? Right? If you can do that, I think your job will always be safe, right?
Right.
And of course, if you can't, you got to worry.
Yeah, absolutely true. And often, in the discussion so far, right? So we have touched upon multiple topics related to, starting with data, bringing that data together, generating insights. Then we also discuss about customer engagement. How do you build loyalty for customers? What kind of impact should you look for, right? And what is the timeline and all of that? And then we did dwell upon AI as well, right? But now the question comes, with all of these things, do you build or do you buy, right? So either you can build all of these things that we discuss in-house, or you can buy it from some a specialist or domain expertise who has been doing this for multiple years, right? So what is your suggestion then? Because since you have been actively involved with multiple organizations, retail organizations, right? And often I believe in working with C-levels and being in the C-level yourself, right? You might have always faced this question, right? So what do you think from your perspective?
Well, the short answer is don't build it yourself. And let me explain why. When you build it yourself, you have to start with a core team that you have to recruit. And I've gone through this several times, several companies where we do build it ourselves, try to anyway. We bring in this core team. Turnover is very quick for coders, and every coder has their own unique way. So when that person leaves, you basically have to start all over again. And you cannot build a loyalty program in a few months. You can, but you've got a loyalty program and that's it. But you don't have any meat behind it, basically. So, but to continue to discuss about the team, the high turnover, you have to start all over again. They don't put all the factors and benefits into what a customer really is looking for in a loyalty program, because you've got someone that's got a vision, but they don't have the experience.
Yeah.
And they have the knowledge, but they don't have the wisdom. And I use that term a lot. You can have knowledge, but if you don't have the wisdom how to use the knowledge, and that's what's happened to a lot of loyalty programs in retail. They think they can do it. They think they can do it cheaper, and that's why they do it. It's not because they're opposed to third-party software or any kind of systems. They think they can do it cheaper, but it's not. And every company I've worked with where we've started building it ourselves, we still have to bring in a third party, either a consultant to help or a third party to finish the system, which ends up costing more. And also, even if you buy third party, bring in third party, and you have a contract, you cut that contract, and you even get the code, et cetera, you can't use it because you don't understand how it was written and so forth. So it's got, in my opinion, it needs to be a third party provider. But also, when you're using a third party, not only the software, the hardware, everything you're using, regardless of what it is, you've got to make sure you got an ironclad SLA. Because, again, from my history, I've worked with several companies. Once they sign that deal, it's adios amigo. You don't see them again. And I think that's something that we take pride in here, is that it's a hand-holding process all the way through, and it's not just a one-off and walk away. But I highly recommend and also with the third party, you hold them accountable. And if they have high turnover, you don't care. They still have to deliver. But if you have high turnover internally, you got a problem. And I've never, and this sounds an indictment against me, but I've never been able to deliver a system on time because of the staff turnover, unfortunately. Ahmar?
Yeah. No, so absolutely agree with what Danny said, but I'll kind of add a few more things here, right? I think when you're starting off and you really do not have any experience in, let's say, data and analytics and all of that, of course, it is advisable to go with a partner who is well experienced in that area, who has worked with similar companies as yours, who has kind of shown delivered tangible value, and you basically do all the due diligence that you want to do, and then onboard a partner, because it makes sense. But I also feel, Miran, that in today's day and age, every company is a data company, every company is a AI company, right? So you might be a retailer, and your core job is, of course, to make sure that you are offering the best products to your customers at the best prices, right? And the overall experiences of that shopping, of that interaction is really good. But at the same time, you can't be, how do I say, oblivious of data and AI and systems that basically help you deliver that great experience to your customers. So it has to be a mix in my mind. You work with capable partners, but at the same time, at some point in time, you got to also have people internally within your teams to be able to kind of understand, right, and work alongside the partners to be able to deliver value, right? Because there's no if you don't do that, there's no solution to it, right? You have to start building those capabilities. It takes time, right? It cannot be done, as Danny was also mentioning, right? These are things that cannot be done in a weeks or months, right? It takes years, but it is good to start that process, right? So that you transform your company into a data-driven organization that is utilizing data in all the business functions that are there, and ultimately being able to deliver good experience and good value to the customers that you serve, right? And in that process, you build your own team as well, and you also work with capable vendors and software companies or providers, so that together you are able to deliver that value.
Right. Absolutely. It has been an amazing discussion. Before we wrap up, just the last question, because we are nearing 2025, we're in October, and a lot of the retailers, specifically in Southeast Asia, are going through that budgeting and strategy planning and all of that, right? So what do you think, in short, what do you think is the outlook for 2025? What is that one or two things that a retailer should focus on for the next year?
Okay, so I'd say customer experience, right? So focus on the end goal, right? What is it that you want to you are planning to improve, let's say, right, in the next year. How you do it, whether it is AI, whether it is BI, whether it is CI, and all of that is separate, right? But what is it that you're really wanting to improve? I would say customer experience is very, very important, right? For to be honest, not just the next year, possibly the year after that and the year after that as well, right? So retailers really need to take a good hard look at what is it that they are offering right now and how can they improve that overall experience, right? With all of that competition that is now coming from everywhere, online, live commerce and whatnot, um, how do physical brick and mortar or omni-channel retailers continue to stay relevant? Because it's a commoditized business at the end of the day. So customer experience is very, very important, and how can they improve that? So focusing on customer experience and then kind of working backwards from there and saying that, okay, if I were to deliver this exceptional customer experience, these are the systems that I need to have in place, and then I'll kind of go about it, right? So one would be around customer experience. Second, I think could be around costs. How do you manage your costs efficiently? Because there is a continuous pressure on margins with whatever else is happening in the world. Supply chains are getting impacted. So your costs are continuously, so your COGS or your costs of getting or procuring those goods are continuously increasing, and it's taking a big toll on your profitability mostly, right? So you got to now start thinking about, okay, what are the ways in which I could reduce some of this cost, right? And I would say here is where automation and AI could be helpful, right? Wherein you could identify again areas within your organization where you could kind of bring in the necessary systems in place to be able to cut those costs, right? So yeah, customer experience, cost would be two big priorities in my mind. If I were a retailer and I have, let's say, I'm managing a retail enterprise, I think these would be the two things that I would have on my mind.
Yeah. And Danny, what
I agree 100%. I think that customer first always has to be top of mind with any retailer, any type business. And in the last several years, because of the economic conditions, of course, retailers especially focused on one thing: cutting cost. It's not the customer experience. As a result, the customer has many options today, much more so than they've had in the past. The customer also is looking for more value, but they're also looking for that experience, as mentioned. And a customer, when they walk into a store, they want, wow, oh my God. That's the experience they expect today, not just walking through with a bunch of SPGs with their head hanging down, et cetera, and boring displays and so forth. They want a true experience, and they want an experience so when they walk out, they're happy. They're happy with the purchase they made, they're happy with the experience, and they'll tell their friends and family, et cetera. So it's customer first, and when they do make the decisions on cutting costs, as Ahmar mentioned, it's got to be an intelligence decision. Every decision that's made related to cost, they have to ask the question, what's the impact to my customer?
Exactly. Yeah.
If I close my toilet because I don't want to clean the toilets, what's the impact to the customer?
Yeah.
And this happens where they say, go into the mall. When they go into the mall, they don't come back.
Yeah.
So, things simple like that are things that retailers have to focus on.
Yeah.
It's the simple things that retailers have forgotten about. And it sounds like I'm preaching. I am preaching because retailers need to wake up. Because, again, we go back to department stores, but it's all been about cutting cost.
Yeah.
So now it's time to turn the tables and customer first. What does my customer want? Taking that and then using the intelligence you've got, the BI, the AI, and et cetera, to use it to your advantage to get those customers engaged and to give them that experience that they expect. Because, again, they'll go somewhere else. There's no loyalty today to a brand like there used to be.
True.
Yeah.
It's all about, I'll move around because of the experience.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely agreed. Thank you so much. It has been a very engaging, insightful, and a lot of takeaways from this discussion. I hope our viewers will definitely like it. So here we wrap up. Thank you again so much for coming to this podcast, and we look forward to having more such insightful discussions in future.
Sure.
Thank you, Miran.
Thank you. Thank you.
You did a good job. Thank
Sure
you.
did.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. you.